Welcome to What's in the Box, episodes of horror with Donna and Eric. I'm Donna,
And I'm Eric.
and we are doing our spotlight on Meet the Authors of Texas AuthorCon 2. Both of us will be there in attendance as vendors, so that will be exciting. It'll be my first time having a table, so I'm really kind of
Yeah, it's going
nervous
to be
about
really
that.
cool. Nah, you're going to be great. I think that's awesome that you got a table.
Yeah,
And if I remember correctly, you're sharing with Jason Nicky.
that's correct. Yep.
That's awesome. He's a cool guy. So,
Yeah.
and I saw the placement. You guys are really close to us, so we'll be able to have a lot of fun and hijinks and all that stuff while we're
Yeah.
doing slinging
That's
books.
Yep. Slinging books. So, um, this is just our second episode of these interviews. We figured we'd get ours out of the way first, after Meryl, of course. So we have some icebreaker questions that we're going to be asking all the authors. And I guess I'll ask the first one. So, Jason, Michael, or Freddie, which one is your favorite, Eric?
Well, it's funny because initially we just had Jason and Michael,
Yep.
and didn't even think to make it the trilogy. So, but mine's Jason. I will always pick Jason. I understand the other arguments, but Jason's my guy. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, I like Freddie, but he's more kind of comical, which, some people have pointed out. But I kind of like that. I just like his aesthetic.
mhm. Well, I
Um,
think he's got more personality, right? Because he
yeah,
speak and he has the jokes and the kills are really good. And I think one and three are iconic movies. I mean, they
yeah,
really are head and shoulders above the rest of them. So
yeah. But you have, I like him because you get the interaction with his victims. It's not just like, I'm stabbing you and you're dead, you know,
yeah, yeah, and that
which
might
not
be
a,
why I don't like Michael that much, because there's nothing to Michael. He is just really a force of nature,
yeah.
and I get the appeal of some of the stuff that they do, um, but for some reason I've always gravitated to Jason. I love Freddie, but when I look at the two, catalogs, I think Friday the 13th has more solid movies than Nightmare on Elm Street does.
Yeah.
If they
Yeah.
would have
I mean,
stopped after three or four, I mean, I
hmm
enjoy watching four. Five is when you really start getting kind of on shaky ground, and
hmm
six is terrible.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of a lot of sequels to movies because as you just said, the farther you go, the worse it gets. It kind of gets cheesy and they're just trying to figure out a way to make a buck off of the
yeah, it's a
name,
money grab for sure. Yeah.
you know.
And I wonder
Um,
how much longer is it going to be before we have, I guess we could have easily put Leatherface on there, or is Art the Clown going to make it on there soon?
yeah.
I'm in the middle of watching Terrifier 2, and he's as charismatic as Freddy,
Mm,
but he also is silent like Jason. So it's nice to kind of see that balance between the two. But yeah, I mean, I can't get into. I wouldn't be upset if Freddie won the overall
yeah.
bet. So, but yeah, I've always been a big Jason fan. And I think one way we can look at it is the remakes. I
hmm
always find that the Friday the 13th remake is better than the other two. Although, if I'm being honest, I haven't watched the Nightmare one because I just am so completely uninterested in anybody other than um, what's his name? I'm gonna blank right when we get to it. Playing Krueger. I mean,
Yeah.
he
Robert
is
England.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he really, and I think that's part of the problem is he's so charismatic. He's had the
hmm
talking parts. You can't just put anybody in there. And
Exactly. And I was going to say that Jason and Michael are silent, so you could, and they wear a mask. So, so you could just put anybody in there. And yes, Freddy Krueger has a lot of prosthetics on his face, but it's that voice
yeah, not
of,
yeah, but even that, even you take those prosthetics them off, and you see him,
yeah.
and it's just you can tell it's him.
Mm,
So he's amazing.
yeah. All right. And the next classic question is vampires or werewolves?
I think we've kind of established it during our werewolf series about how much more
Yep.
we enjoy werewolves. So
Yeah.
um, there's not much to add to that. I mean, I would just rather watch a werewolf movie. Now I can't. I mean, there are a couple. I mean, I like Lost Boys
hmm
and
Lost Boys is great.
and Fright Night. Those are awesome movies, and they're vampires. I know a lot of people like 30 Days of Night, and I think it's
Hmm.
okay, but I just wish there was more to the vampires' backstory. I wish we knew a little bit more about them.
Yeah.
Because I mean, technically, it could be anything. It could be any kind of killing entity. It doesn't have to be
Hmm.
vampires for that movie to work. So,
Right.
but I thought that it's a good, it's got some good kills and some fun stuff in it. So I can't argue against that one. But I don't know. I just don't. I'm not a big fan of vampires. They feel like
Yeah.
Super. It almost feels like it's cheating. It's like Superman. It's just too
Yeah.
much. There's not enough there. Although I do love a classic,
Hmm.
old school Hammer horror, Universal, Dracula. Those kind of things. I think those are fun movies to watch sometimes.
Yeah. It's difficult because I remember, as a kid, you know, watching werewolf movies or, but I can't off the top of my head recall a vampire movie that I watched as a kid, like as a young kid. But I remember watching like American Werewolf in London in middle school,
Hmm.
so I think they just have always been there. It's always been a werewolf for me. One of the first horror books I remember reading is a werewolf book, Moondance by S.P. Somtow. Um, and that was like as an adult, that was one of the first books horror books I remember reading. So I really enjoy werewolves,
Yeah,
much
I'm
more
with you.
than,
Again, I think part of it's just how fun it is when they change and the way they do all that stuff and all the extra. I mean, sometimes in the vampire movies, all they do is slap some teeth on them and paint them white,
yeah,
and there you go.
yeah. And I think another problem with vampires too is when Interview with a Vampire came out, that was in the 90s, and it kind of like twilighted
Hmm.
the vampire, if that makes sense, made it
Prettied them up.
prettied them up, romanticized them, just like with Twilight. Um, and that's kind of like, yeah, I like my supernatural romances sometimes, but that's totally different from horror. Like,
Even
I,
those, though, my favorite ones are werewolf based. So
yeah, yep.
the
So,
Patricia Briggs stuff is really good. So
yeah, yeah, I love
um,
that series
yeah, and it
for
has
sure.
vampires and stuff in it, but they don't focus on them as much. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm not. I don't know. I don't know. I hate to say it because when I was growing up, I watched Lost Boys all the time, and I watched Fright Night constantly. So I mean, I do love those as movies. They're probably in my top 10, but I will avoid a vampire movie. I will embrace. You can be the worst werewolf movie, and I'll give you a shot.
yeah,
But I might just ignore a vampire movie,
hmm,
and I'm
yeah,
sure I have many times. Where
yep,
I had the opportunity to sit down and do it. Um, I think most of the times I like a vampire movies because I like the people that are chasing the vampires more often.
yep,
You know,
yeah.
if there's a good Van Helsing or if they're fighting werewolves, you know, as much as I like the underworld stuff, you're still rooting for the werewolves. I
Hmm.
mean, the vampires almost always come across as worse than just vampires. They're always the snooty
They're just
aristocracy.
horrible people.
Yeah. So I can't think of too many vampire movies that I was, gung ho into. So,
Yeah, rooting for the vampires. Yeah. So, what was your favorite scary movie as a kid?
that's a funny one to think about because, I'm sure you were the same way. We were kind of introduced to scary movies that probably were inappropriate at the time.
Hmm.
Um, but I do remember, so I saw a lot of stuff way too early. So I was probably watching crazy stuff. I do remember being really scared at Something Wicked This Way Comes as a kid. I thought that was a really creepy movie. I saw that one, when it first came out in the early 80s. So as a traditional child movie, I find that one to be pretty good as a scary movie. I love The Pit and the Pendulum with Vincent Price. That's probably one of my favorite movies. And so I watched that a ton as a kid too. But like I said, I just watched Friday the 13th movies on repeat with, Nightmare 1 and 3 mixed in.
Yep.
What's weird is Halloween never made my rotation. So I've seen the Halloween movies, but usually it's only once in the theater. And maybe if I'm lucky, I sat down and I know I've watched 1 and 2 since then because I got the set. So, but like I don't think I saw 3 until I was much older. I never gave it much time, and I think that's a pretty good movie. That would have probably made my list. But if I was picking from when I was a kid, I did love Pit and the Pendulum, so that'd probably be it.
Good one. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I don't know if I can really pick a favorite movie as from a kid. Like you said, we were watching things that were inappropriate for our age. I've mentioned before on our podcast that, my parents really didn't censor what we watched unless it was straight up pornography. So in middle school, I was watching American Werewolf in London. I was watching The Howling, um, just things that probably a middle schooler shouldn't have been watching. The Exorcist. My mom would not care. But of course, this was way back in the day before every room had a VCR or a
Hmm.
TV in it. So if my parents didn't want to watch it, we weren't watching it. You know.
Right.
Um, so I mean, Cat People was a good one that I
Hmm.
watched that was pretty inappropriate.
Yeah, that was
Back.
on steady rotation on the movie
Yeah.
channel back in the day too. So I've seen that
Yeah.
many times too. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd have to say it was either American Werewolf in London or Cat People. Maybe in my older teen years, um, or like, you know, yeah, I'd say older teen years, high school years, I'd have to say like Lost Boys, um, because I had a thing for the guy who played Alex Winter. I had a big crush on Alex Winter. He played in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. He was Marco
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
in that movie. And of course, Kiefer Sutherland. I had a
Sure.
crush on Kiefer
And
Sutherland.
Jason Patrick and
Yeah,
of course the Coreys are in
yep,
there. So I mean
yeah,
it's a great that is a good movie. That's one we need to revisit when we do vampires. We
yeah,
definitely need to look to see if there's some sort of novelization or maybe something it could be based on or based off of it and see
yeah,
if we can't get that because that'll be a good one to talk about. I'd like to revisit that movie.
yeah. So what about as an adult? Because we know tastes change over years.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. Well, I'd probably say my number one favorite movie is The Thing.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, if I had to pick three that rotate in like a steady circle, it's The Thing, Event Horizon, and Trick or Treat. So, don't listen to Daniel. He's wrong. Trick or
Yeah.
Treat's a great movie.
And it's funny, I think I watched Trick or Treat for the first time either last Halloween or the Halloween before that. Um, and it was really good.
Yeah, it's a solid film. It's
It
got a weird history that it should have been released.
yeah. Yeah, it was a really good movie. I was surprised.
Yeah,
Um,
because every once in a while you get those direct to DVD movies and you know why. You can see it. But this
yeah,
one has the budget, has a solid script, great actors,
yeah.
perfectly laid out. It's a fun anthology film. That's the other thing. I think anthology films are hard to do
Hmm.
well. And I've seen, yeah, Creep Show is really good. That one's really good. If you go back to the ones in the 60s, some of those are solid, but you can go to Tubi and find 600 horror anthology films and there might be 15 minutes it's worth watching and the rest of it's garbage. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no yeah, I love Trick or Treat. I think it's a great movie.
Yeah.
And I think Sam's a great character too. So
Mm.
I can't wait to. Well, there's been rumblings that there'll be a second one, but who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I could really pick a favorite horror movie as an adult. I mean, there's so many good ones that I've seen that shocked me that they were really good. Like Old
Hmm.
from that was I just was like, I just want some background noise and I put it on and I was like glued to the screen. It
He's
was
a good director.
yeah.
He's a really
Yeah.
good director. I know he's had some missteps. I know some people hate his guts, but when he hits, he hits. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a solid.
Yeah.
You know.
Um so
Yeah,
and I just
it's harder now though as an adult because you have other things around. It's not like when we were kids, you could sit down and watch the same movie every day, for a month.
yep.
I would feel like I was wasting my time now, even though I
Hmm.
like the movie. I just don't want to sit there and that's 2 hours I could have been doing something else that
Right.
as important or whatever. So was seeing something for the first time new.
Yeah.
And almost always it's disappointing. I mean unfortunately. But a couple of these movies are solid. So like I try and watch Event Horizon, Trick or Treat, and The Thing more than once a year.
Yeah.
So I try and make sure I make time for that.
Yeah,
And
that spider head scene in The Thing.
yeah, everything about The Thing I love. I went
Yeah.
through a weird period of, I don't know, it was like a couple years ago when they started really doing the collector sets and stuff. And I got a whole bunch of different versions. And I have it on like HD, DVD, and Blu-ray, and the normal DVD, and all of them have sort of different special features. And I just deep dived and watched all the directors' commentaries, and I just love that movie. I mean, it's almost the perfect movie.
Yeah. Now, I was shocked to see, I was scrolling through, I think it was Netflix last night. Um, and there's a remake of The Thing.
Oh, it's even better. It's not really a true remake. It's a film that takes place right before The Thing. So it's what
Okay.
happened at the other station. So you remember when they go to the Norwegian station or whatever, and they find the empty block of ice and all the stuff, and it's where the dog was running from, the guy in the helicopter shooting. Well,
Yeah.
this movie is everything that happened up until the dog is escaping and the helicopter's flying. And so it basically tells you this is how the alien got to the point where it was able to get to the American station.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
not a real, it's kind of a prequel, but I
Okay.
mean, it takes place right away, and you could watch them back to back, and it's almost a seamless transition of the dog running from the helicopter into the thing. The only thing that ruins it for me is the CGI. It's not terrible, but you can tell it's CGI, and they did such a great job of the special effects in the one from the 80s that
Yeah.
it's just there's something about it, but I overall, and it's got the girl from Scott Pilgrim with the colored hair, Mary Elizabeth something.
Okay.
she's a she's a pretty big actress, and I really like her films, and she's really good in this one. And yeah, no, it's a solid one. It's a fun movie. I mean, it's not the same, it's not on the same level, but
Right, right.
it,
Yeah, I was just
it's
shocked to see
definitely
that. I was
decent.
like, what the heck was that?
And I'll tell you, I appreciated it more that they didn't do a remake, that they tried to do
Yeah.
something a little unique. I mean, it's basically the same thing, except for there's a girl there now.
Yeah.
Because the original thing, no, there's no females, but it's the same kind of thing happening, same kind of idea. Um, but it's a fun movie. I
Yeah.
definitely enjoy. I watch that one, not as much as I watch the original, but I will on occasion watch them back to back just to have that full, idea of it.
Experience. Huh.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll have to give it a shot and see. Um, so for people who are new to horror, what is your go-to recommendation for
I had
readers?
the hardest time with this because I was thinking, well, you know, and we've kind of got a taste of it because we've done some of these interviews that'll be playing after this. And I
Hmm.
thought, some of those suggestions are, while all great, were probably different than what I would recommend to dive right in. And I wouldn't recommend Layman right away either, unless somebody was
Yeah.
really telling me, unless somebody said my favorite movie is House of a Thousand Corpses or something like that. Then I'd be like, if they said Terrifier was the movie that they most connected with and they wanted a book, then I might say, okay, here's some Layman, here's some Ed Lee. But I ended up, went to, see that, The
The
Ruins.
Ruins. Okay.
And I think this is darn near perfect. I mean, it's a great read. Now the problem is it's still 500 pages, so
Mm.
it's still really big. But if I was going to say you want a taste of horror that isn't maybe over the top or too extreme, I think it's a well written story, and it's got some really good stuff in it. And I remember reading that and feeling Scott Smith's a really good writer. So I mean, the horror of the situation, you start to feel it as you're reading it. So.
Yeah. I try to stay away from recommending things like Stephen King because
Mhm.
everybody's going to say, read Stephen King, read Stephen King. Um, I have like two books that I consistently recommend if someone's looking for something newer to horror, they're new to horror. Um, Fur by Matthew Cash, which I think has been a not Stephen King book of the
Mhm.
week, which it's a werewolf book. Um, it's not super extreme. One of the most disturbing parts of the book is actually happens off scene. It's not like written out what
Mhm.
actually happens. It's just like you get this build up and then you have him talking about what happened after the fact. You don't actually see that scene. Um, that one and Moondance by S.P. Somtow.
Yeah.
Again, another werewolf book.
And I think
It's
another, wasn't that a Stephen King book too? No?
Nope, it's
No,
S.P.
you haven't done it
Somtow.
yet? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I was saying I thought it
Oh
was
no,
one
no,
of our
no.
Stephen King.
Yes, yes, it was. It was.
Yeah.
Sorry, I
I was just saying because they
misunderstood
sound
what you said.
familiar.
Yeah. It's a historical horror book, a werewolf book. It takes place in, I don't want to say the Wild West, but like the 1800s maybe. Um, and again, there's not a lot of gore. I think the most disturbing part of that book for someone may be that the main character of Esperanza goes to a physician or a pharmacist and gets herbs to have an abortion. But again, it's not like described that when she's actually having, the
Hmm.
miscarriage or whatever. It just is a mention of her going to this chemist to get these herbs and whatnot. So I do try, I definitely stay away from recommending to people, Daniel Volpe or Aaron Borgard or even the Poplik Massacre. As much as I love that book, I think it's, if someone's new to horror, I'm like, I'm not going to scar them for life right away.
Well, that's an honor to have you say that. Hopefully, my suggestion in the background helped lead to that. But I
Yeah,
was just thinking here, if Ruins is too thick, and I know the person's looking for something shorter, I'd probably go with Psycho. I think that's another
yeah,
read that people
yeah.
should get into, and it's half the size. So, and that's a good. He's a really good writer too. So I think they'll keep him going.
Yeah.
So we got four really good suggestions right there for people that are interested in checking out new things in horror, I guess,
Hmm.
if they're
Yep.
new to it.
Do you have a favorite horror novel of all time?
That's another hard question. Man, I always say Exorcist 3, Legion. I loved that one. When I was growing up, I thought that was a great book. It was always one of my go-tos. And I love Layman, and the first one I read of his was Darkness Tell Us, and I mean it's so wild and crazy and just so over the top that it put me on the path that I'm on now. So I always consider that a favorite. Although I don't know if I would consider it one of his top 5 books overall. It's still one of
Yeah.
my favorites just because of what the personal connection I have with it. Um, Yeah, some of the books that I thought were my favorites we've already discussed, and we went back and looked at Exorcist and stuff, the original Exorcist, and then we had so many problems with it. Now I'm wondering,
Yeah.
if I can trust myself in it, because there are always a list of books that I would always think of as my favorites, but now I'm like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. But if I mean gun to head, I'd probably say Legion, um, because it's so much different from the original,
Yeah.
and but still contains some pretty cool stuff with it. So. What about you? What's your favorite?
Yeah. I gotta say The Stand by Stephen King. It's one of the first The Stand and It were the two books that I started off reading when I started reading horror as a, young adult.
Hmm.
Which is funny because they're like huge books.
Yeah.
Um, but I've read The Stand 3 times. I don't ever get bored with reading it.
Do you
Um,
always read the original or do you read the director's cut?
the original.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you read
Uh,
both versions? Do
no.
you? No. Okay.
No.
Just curious.
Yeah. And I never get sick of watching that mini series that came
Mhm.
out about it years
The one on
ago.
ABC.
Yeah. And I just have to say that's my favorite. I'm sure I've read better books, but that was like the first book that I read that I was like, I could read this a couple more times, you know?
With King, it's The Shining for me. I've read that one more than once, and I always go back to that one. I really think that's one I read when I was younger, and so I have a little bit of love for The Shining.
Yeah, I
But
haven't read that yet.
I've actually never read The Stand. I've tried it, but I got bored and kind of wandered off. So I
Yeah, it's a
probably,
it's a big one. I can't remember exactly
yeah,
how many pages, but it's probably
Small. Well, yeah, yeah. I guess it depends on the version too, because I think
Yeah.
the extended one's got a couple hundred more pages. But I read a lot of Sting, a lot of
Yeah.
King growing up, like the early stuff, Cujo, Carrie, Pet Cemetery. I think that's in my mind that might be his best. I've read It. I've read Shining, but Shining's the one I've read more than 5 times. I think I've read It 3 times, so that would be the next one. And but yeah, no, I mean, I get it. King is he's got a place, right?
Yep.
So, but I also like the fact that we try and celebrate other people too. So, because you're right, most people are going to say, "Hey, this Stephen King book,"
Yeah.
and I wonder when we get done, is it going to always be the same Stephen King book? So I'm hoping we'll get a couple interesting Stephen King mentions. Something off the beaten path. Maybe somebody really likes, um, Needful Things or
Yeah. Well, another favorite book of mine is Eyes of the Dragon. I just don't mention that one because I think it's fantasy and not horror. I'm sure I've read it like twice, and it's been a very long time since I read it. I just don't recall any like true horror elements to it. I think it's all fantasy. Because I believe from what I read, he had written that for his daughter. Um,
no idea. Yeah. For some
yeah.
reason, when you said it, I immediately think of Dean Koontz. I know he has a
Yeah.
dragon one too.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what everybody else suggests as their favorite, or their suggestion too. A lot of people's suggestions are different than their favorites, which I always find, you know, funny. Which I
Yeah.
think it happened here too. Well, although The Ruins is one of the books that I always mention when I'm talking about favorites, because I thought it was a really good book. So.
Yeah. I still haven't read that yet. I have so many books on the list.
I know, right? And it's just constantly growing because there's so many great voices out there in the indie
Oh,
world. So
yeah, and you just want to read them all and, sample them all.
yeah, there's not enough time in the day just to sit back. So
Yeah.
all right. So I guess I mean obviously we kind of discussed it before, our genres.
Yeah.
You're writing in horror. The way I always think of it, it doesn't matter it's all horror to me. So like I have something coming out on the 26th and it's a Western, but it's a horror,
Mm.
Western. And um I've got some, almost all my books are, some of them can be kind of, relationshipy or real, romantic or whatever. But I mean, at the end, it's all about the horror of the situation and all that stuff. So no matter where I put it, that's what I'm looking for is the jumps.
Yep.
So
Yeah, it's not I don't like to consider authors an extreme horror author or
yeah, I
a
mean,
quiet horror author. You're a horror author.
right, I always say when I say extreme, I just do that to warn the person that the F word's in there and
Yeah.
there might be some nudity and all that good stuff. It's just the R. It's just putting an R on the thing.
R rating, yeah.
Yeah, but most of the time when people that aren't big into horror, if they hear that you write horror, they automatically assume that's what you're doing. So
Hmm.
you don't really have to get too much into it. But um, yeah, no, I do love a good. It's kind of fun to say, oh, I write extreme horror, but when it comes down to it, it's all to me, like you said, horror. So it doesn't
Yep.
really matter. The rest of it doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah. Yep. And I mean, I do write horror, but I also do my poetry,
Hmm.
my dark erotic poetry, I guess you'd call it. That's what Compulsions is. So I haven't really written anything outside of those two genres. Um, so who knows where the future will take me with my
It'll be
writing.
interesting to see.
For sure. Now we've talked about this before, uh, but what do you like to listen to when you're writing?
Oh, yeah, I usually have a score or soundtracks from, like movies and stuff that I like. Um, I'm, I got a stack of CDs next to the computer. I'll put those in or I'll go find them on YouTube. Lately I've been listening to a lot of weird, you know, instrumental music and stuff that people put together and put on YouTube, and they'll be like, dark villain from the 18th century music to listen to, and so it's supposed
Oh,
to be geared towards that. And so try and, like when I did the newest one, To Stare Death in the Eyes, it's a Western, so I listened to all those spaghetti Western soundtracks when I was doing that. And then sometimes I'll have like, I'll listen to Metallica, Master of Puppets a lot, or I listen to Tool if I need something a little heavier, in my ear while it's going. Problem is I don't like to hear anything words wise,
yeah.
So then you start listening to the songs, and then you start kind of paying more attention to that than you are what you're doing. So I have the attention span of a squirrel, so I need to make sure that I'm focused. So usually instrumental music is what I'll go for. Sometimes I'll break out old classical music, things like that. But a lot of times it'll be a movie. I'll try and think, well, what am I doing right here? Am I looking for something quiet, or is this a quiet scene, or is this like a big, like the Jason chasing someone through the woods kind of thing? And so then I'll try
Yeah.
and match it that way too, like, big gladiator score, or maybe I'm listening to something. If you've ever listened to or if you've ever seen the movie The Fountain with Hugh Jackman and the girl from The Mummy, what's her name?
Oh,
Raquel
Rachel Weisz.
Rachel Weisz, yeah.
Yeah.
She it's called The Fountain, and the score is done by Clint Marshall, and it's an amazing score. And it actually covers everything. Usually I can listen to just that score if I'm looking for something that's kind of got all the peaks and valleys, because that movie's filled with that kind of stuff. So
Oh,
I
wow.
will listen to that score a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta have silence.
I find that amazing.
I,
I think it's
I,
probably because my house isn't silent. My house has
yeah,
always got noise going on. So
yeah. Well, my house really has a lot of noise going on too. Um, so it's kind of weird that I prefer silence when I write, but maybe I'm the opposite. I prefer the silence when I write because my house is always noisy,
yeah, that could be very well it. Yeah.
you know. It's like, and I'm the same way when I'm working. I don't have anything going other than my computer when I'm working at home, which I work from home all the time. And then, when the kiddo gets home from school, he's very loud.
Yeah, I can
So
imagine. As they
it,
are,
yeah,
right?
it's hard
Kids
for
are
me to
always loud.
concentrate. So yeah, I got to have the silence.
Yeah, part of the reason I write so late is because everybody's finally asleep. And then that way I don't have to have headset on. So I do a lot of my writing after midnight. And then I edit and stuff in the day when it doesn't require quite as much focus. Although I do some writing during the day, when it's necessary. But I prefer to
Yeah.
write at night because the house is totally quiet. I can put on whatever I want to put on, and then focus on what I'm doing, and not have the distraction of, because the girls, they're not trying to go outside all the time, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, so everybody's kind of settled down. That makes it for an easier writing environment. And I'm more of a night owl anyway, so to me, it's easier to be functional after midnight than it is to try and get up and do stuff like at 7 or 8 in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah, my wife's the
Uh,
opposite. She's a morning person, so she's up bright and early, and then goes to bed kind of earlier than, especially when she used to work shift work, and she'd have to really weird hours. So she's
yeah.
kind of conditioned herself for these earlier hours. So
Yeah. So what do you have coming up next? What's your next
well, I'll have
projects?
the next thing coming out is To Stare Death in the Eyes. It's a rewrite. It's an extreme preferred author edition. So I've taken the old story down, and I'll put the new one up when it's time. Something I wrote years ago as a tester for KU, but it wasn't. It was horror, but it really was as PG as I could make it, because I knew who was going
Mm,
to be reading it. So it was written for a different audience than my normal audience. So this time I took it and totally ramped it up, and it actually changed most of the story. So I think maybe I saved 20% of it, and the rest of it's new stuff. So that'll be out. So I'll have that at the table. And then the plan is another Poplick will be out before Texas Author Con. So there should be some new
fingers
Poplick.
crossed.
Yeah.
I need some
So
more Goat Man.
yeah, I'm on rewrite 3, I think. So 3 or 4. So I've been working on it for a while, but I want to make sure that it hits the right note. So,
Yeah.
the plan is to have it ready. So, and there'll be another Dawn, Texas, and I've got the very early beginnings of another Ephraim Godwin from my first book, The Sins of the Past. There'll be a direct sequel to that.
I still have to read Sins of the Past.
Yes, I have. I've got a lot of things, irons in the fire. I just need to actually get it done. So hopefully I will have some stuff. But the
Yeah.
goal is to have some new stuff at the table for that and for scares if I get an opportunity to go next year too. So
Yeah.
what do
Yeah.
you
So
got? You got some stuff coming up, right?
yeah, I've got a bunch of anthology stories that are coming out this year. I think I counted it, and if everything releases this year, I think I'm in like 6 anthologies this year.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if I remember correctly, they're all different. So I mean, it's going to
Mhm.
be really cool and
Yeah.
an eclectic group of anthologies to be in.
Yeah, I'm very excited for them all. Because like you said, they are all completely different. I'm actually working on a project with 12 other authors. We're doing an exquisite corpse kind of project where each author takes a chapter. So that's really fun.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah, I can't wait. And I'm not going to give away any details about it, but the plot and is just insane. It's hilarious. It's just going to be a lot of fun to write. And I'm a little nervous because I'm the 8th author to write. So I'll have 7 other authors before me writing their chapters. So when I was asked what position I wanted, I said I don't want to be the first and I don't want to be the last. I
Right.
was hoping for like second or third.
Yeah. It's a
So
tough draw, but I think you'll do great with 8. I mean,
yeah,
that's a good place to be too, because you're going to kind of steer it where it needs to go for the ending. So
yeah. And
that'll
I'm
be a fun.
hoping it won't be done before Texas AuthorCon, but I'm hoping to get before the end of the year my novella done that I've been wanting to write for a couple of years. Um, it's a continuation of D&T Publishing does a newsletter story every
Mhm.
month when they put out their newsletter, and one of my shorts, I'll call it a flash fiction piece because it wasn't very long, was in not last year, but the year before. And just a lot of people had said they wanted more on this character. So I came up with a concept and I outlined all the chapters and everything and had started writing it. So I'm hoping to get that
That's awesome.
finished before the end of the year.
That's very cool. I love to hear that. I outline because that's the opposite of what I normally do. So
Yeah.
kudos to you for getting the outline done.
Well,
Because
this is my first like really long project because most of what I do has been in anthologies.
Mhm.
Um, so I kind of wanted to I didn't really do a huge outline because I know the character. I basically just went through and wrote out my chapter headings because it's each chapter is going to be a different victim story. So each chapter is going to be named the name of the victim. And so I just wanted to get my character names out there so I
Yeah, no,
knew
that's
what
perfect. I mean,
chapter. Yeah.
that's a big part of the battle. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So and that'll help you, and you'll be able to get it that much quicker. So
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. And hopefully you'll have, well, like you said, you won't have it done by Texas AuthorCon because I mean that is a tight window,
Yeah.
uh, but it will be out sometime. So that'll be cool. And then hopefully everybody that comes to see us at Texas AuthorCon keeps an eye out for our new stuff as it comes out after that. So
Yep. Yep. For sure. So, we both have stuff on Amazon. Most of your stuff is on Amazon. Do you have
mhm.
stuff on Godless now?
Yep. Well, I've been calling them my godless stories. Kiss Me Where It Smells Funny, The Surrogate, There's Something in the Water, and then To Stare Death in the Eyes. Those 4 will be on godless. My larger books, none of them are on godless. Some of the links are, but they're not on there
Yeah.
anymore. But I wanted to take have stuff on there that I could also have on Amazon. So that's why I started doing some of the smaller ones.
Right.
They're about 100 pages long, and then you read them at lunch or whatever, and you have a
Mm.
second to sit down and get a complete story. But it's not one of those that's a little, it's like Shadow Within and Poplik, they're kind of thicker books.
Yeah,
Sins of the Past is a thicker book. So, and the Don Texas stuff, while individually initially they were small, they've all grown into larger things. So,
right. Yeah.
um, I'm trying to keep a couple of these a little shorter, and I'm hoping to have 6 to 8 of them by the end of the year on Godless.
Yeah. Yeah, I have my collaborations with Todd Love are on Godless only for now. And then on Amazon you can find Compulsions, and Finding Heaven
Yep.
is also on Amazon.
And we'll have links below so you guys can click on whatever you want to if you want to check any of our stuff out. And there'll be a link for Texas Author Con because they have a giveaway, right? That you have to sign up for.
Yep, so it's a free event, but they do suggest going to Eventbrite to get a ticket, because in order to be eligible for the door prizes, you do have to have a ticket.
Yeah.
So it's just free. You just go in and put in your name and how many people. If you have like the whole family coming with you, put in 5 people, whatever, and then your email address, and then that makes you eligible for the door prizes.
Yeah, the door prizes are really cool. Last year they gave away like baskets, and they would be filled with signed books and some merch and just a whole bunch, codes for audiobooks. And so you got a lot of good stuff. Although I don't know, because this event's a little bigger than last time. So I don't know what all they'll be giving, but I have a feeling there's going to be plenty of signed books and maybe some t-shirts and things of that nature. So
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so we will see you at Texas AuthorCon.
yep. Yeah, you guys need to come out, make a plan to come out July 15th and 16th. Is that
14th
right?
and 15th.
14th and 15th. All right.
Yeah.
Links down right there. So, but yeah. So in July, middle of July,
Yeah.
you guys need to come check us out in Texas. There's going to be 60 plus people with books and collectible stuff and t-shirts and all that good stuff. So
yeah, more books than other stuff, but
right. But you never know. You might
never
find
know.
your next favorite shirt, or I know one guy's going to have toys and things of that nature that leans, towards the horror stuff. So you might find something you've been looking for. So
Yep. So come on down and join us. We're gonna have a good time.
yep, just hang out. There'll be panels and author readings and people at the tables. They'll just chit chat with you and all that good stuff. So and the hotel is beautiful. So
Yes, it is. Yeah, I was looking at the pictures that Meryl had sent, and I was like, oh, that's a really nice place.
yeah, it's going to be nice. I think we're going to have a good time. So, and you're going to see, because we're going to have these interviews with all these other authors that are coming. All the ones that want to do an interview, we're going to have on here so that you guys can kind of get a taste of their personality and their books and all that stuff. And maybe, when you get there, you'll know where you want to go immediately and check out stuff.
Yep, and it is, multi-genre, so it's not just horror. So some of the authors we're going to be interviewing, we maybe have never read their stuff, likely have never read their stuff.
Right, but it'll be a good introduction for us as well as everybody watching and stuff. So
Yep.
it'll be fun, and I think that's cool too, that we're not going to just have the one genre at the event. There's something there for everybody.
Yep, because that will, bring in more people. And hey, my preferred genre is Westerns, but ooh, that looks like a really interesting horror book. So I think I might pick that up, or vice versa,
Yeah, definitely.
All right, until next time.
All right, see y'all later.